Turning to our top story on Labor's move to, well, at least in a rhetorical sense, embrace coal more, with Anthony Albanese touring Queensland this week. Joining me now for more on this is Greens MP Adam Bandt in our Melbourne studio. Adam Bandt, thanks very much for your time. Anthony Albanese is saying exporting more coal in particular won't have a big difference on the world's emissions. Why is he wrong?
That's total rubbish. Coal is fueling the fires that are devastating Australia at the moment. The smoke around Sydney is coal-fuelled. Our towns are running out of water. That's in part because of coal fuelling global warming. Coal is the #1 contributor to global warming. Australia is the world's largest coal exporter. There is no place for burning more coal if we want to get global warming under control. And it seems that now Labor has joined the Liberals on a unity ticket towards backing in coal. There is now no distinction between Labor and Liberals' position on coal, and that is a recipe for more deaths.
OK. When you say that the smoke around Sydney, for example, is coal-fuelled, even experts say you can't attribute individual events, of course, to climate change, and still there's only the exacerbation. It's not like they cause fires or they wouldn't happen without them. So that's a bit loose with the truth, isn't it? That simple, direct link there.
It's not, because what we are seeing now is exactly what the scientists predicted would happen if we didn't get global warming under control. What we're seeing with 1 degree of global warming is a heated Australia. We're seeing the bushfire seasons getting longer. We're seeing more fuel there that fuels these catastrophic fires. We're seeing less moisture, less water. This is what they have predicted would happen if we don't get global warming under control. Now, we've hit 1 degree, and the scientists have told us very, very clearly that if we want to meet the Paris goals of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees and aiming for 1.5, we have to get coal as good as out of the system by 2030. So we're talking about a decade to transition away from coal. That's, if you say you accept the science, as Labor and Liberal do, that's where we need to head. Burning coal as the biggest contributor towards global warming has made these kind of fires, the smoke, the droughts, much more likely, and what we are seeing now is exactly what has been predicted.
So in terms of coal exports, Australia is the biggest exporter, but that only makes up about 6% of the amount of coal that's used around the world. So that's not a huge amount, and we don't know, even if Australia did stop exporting coal, to what extent that would be replaced with, and perhaps even replaced with coal that's not as efficient. There aren't as good environmental standards around other coal mines around the world. So, you know, this 6% substituted for something else. We don't know what the something else would be.
That's the drug dealer's argument. I better sell them my stuff because otherwise they might get it from someone else and it might not be as good a quality. We don't sell asbestos to the rest of the world just simply because otherwise they might get it from somewhere else. We've decided that it's a toxic product, it needs to be treated as such, and it has no place being sold in a society that values life. But in any event, I dispute those figures. I suspect that those figures maybe conflate thermal and metallurgical coal. When you look at thermal coal, Australia is somewhere around about 20% of the world market, as I understand it. If us, as the world's biggest coal exporter, decided to have a plan to get out of the game, it would change the market, it would change the game, and it would send an enormously strong signal to the rest of the world that we are serious. Because look, at the end of the day, if everyone sits on their hands and says, well, we can't do anything because someone else is doing something, and the big players like us, as the world's 3rd largest polluter, don't start to rein in our use of coal, then we are all toast. We are all toast, and we will not stop dangerous global warming. So we, as someone who's one of the world's biggest exporters of exporter of thermal coal, or exporter of coal generally, needs to start taking action.
Yeah, a big exporter of thermal coal. As I said, I believe the total amount we export of the overall mix is a lot lower than 20%, but look, I'll double check that figure. What would you do then in terms of phasing out, first of all, exports, and second of all, what we use here in Australia? When could it realistically be phased out?
Well, let's start exporting our sunshine, start exporting our renewable energy in the form of hydrogen or in the form of direct connections across to Asia through undersea cables.
Right, that's easy to say, but I'm talking about what we're doing
Macquarie Bank has started putting money into it.
You can't do it by next year, for example, can you?
We need a 10-year plan to phase out our export of thermal coal. And our plan is to start putting a cap on it now, which means no new coal mines, and then have a process of phasing it out over the course of 10 years so that we have time to look after the workers and the communities in those affected areas, have a meaningful transition with well-paid jobs, bring industries into the area so that at a time that a coal mine shuts, there's new industries there ready to take its place with well-paying jobs. Like, we can do this. And we've had experience in Australia of doing this kind of stuff well and doing it badly. Look at steel, for example. Look at the car-making industries. There's a lot of lessons that we can learn to work out how you do it to support workers and communities through the transition. And that's why we're calling for a Green New Deal, a jobs-rich transition to look after these workers as we make a 10-year transition.
That 10-year transition as well, would that need to be costed, what it would cost the economy, for example, and also the budget? Coal exports, the biggest single earner in the Australian budget at the moment.
Well, how much have the fires cost Australia? Look at agricultural productivity, which is slumping as a result of the drought. How much is climate change costing our economy already? Well, we can't
Australia
go to
Australia participates about 1.7% or 1.4% of the emissions that then have an impact on the environment. Now, we can look forward in 50 years and see what the impact might be, but in the short term, us doing that is not going to appear as much of a budget line item, is it? The amount we've reduced climate change impact by? 1.3,
1.4% of emissions, given that we've got 0.3% of the world's population, is still a pretty big effort. But in any event, we're the world's third largest exporter of pollution. Okay, so we're not a small minnow, as Scott Morrison likes to pretend we are. We are the world's. You know, if exporting pollution was an Olympic sport, we'd be up there on the podium winning a medal. So there's a lot that we can do by starting to rein in ourselves. But look, to the extent that we've got to work with other countries, that's what the climate summit that's on in Madrid is about at the moment as well. Now, if I was Prime Minister, I'd be going to joining with New Zealand, joining with the host country Spain, joining with other countries in the region and saying we need to go and knock on the door of China and so on and start reducing our emissions. Well, no, this is important, Tom, because Scott Morrison will come back and say, well, we're only 1.3%. What can we do while China continues to pollute? But I'd be happy to bet $1 that Angus Taylor will not be asking China to reduce its pollution at this summit. They will not be going there saying the US, China, Russia needs to act. They are in fact doing the opposite. As one of the world's largest exporters of pollution, we can't ask other countries, smaller countries than us, to do it.
Still not actually giving a firm commitment on it's going to only peak by 2030. That's its commitment at the moment. Are you saying that you think if Australia goes and increases its reduction target, China will go, oh, we better do that too?
Well, of course we hope that China does more, but Australia needs to lead. Australia should be saying at this summit, our country is burning. Our towns are running out of water. Our cities are surrounded in smoke. Our reef is dying. We need the rest of the world's help to stop this catastrophe. And then we'd be in a position to join up with others and go to China and follow.
Is that
we should
rather
be part,
than sort of going, if we can be part of a group of countries, we all reduce emissions by more, can you join us? Or do we just put our emissions reduction target up front and say, follow us?
We do both, and we join there's a Climate Ambition Alliance that's meeting at this summit as we speak, and Spain's in that, the United Kingdom is in that, a number of other countries like New Zealand are in that, and they are saying that at this summit, time is running out, and everyone needs to lift their game. And look, we've had an assessment of the state of play at the moment. The Paris Agreement says we want to limit global warming to below 2 degrees, and we're already at 1. And that we've been told that the world needs to do 3 to 5 times as much as what we're doing at the moment if we're to have any chance of meeting that 2-degree goal. Now, can Australia do it by itself? No. Can any country do it by itself? Probably not. Can all the countries do it together if everyone does their bit? Yes, we can. And at the moment, Australia is not only not doing its bit, but it's actually wanting the right now, on a bipartisan Labor-Liberal basis, to continue exporting coal until the situation gets worse. We're going in the wrong direction.
All right. Just one more area within this. We're in essentially the adaptation phase already at 1 degree in the way we're tracking. What do you make of the role of carbon capture and storage technology? Is that a good area for government grants?
No. public money should be going towards renewables. We should be withdrawing the subsidies that we're currently giving to fossil fuels, putting that money into building renewables, putting that money into schools.
Is that to fossil fuels or anyone on
putting that
CCS?
money into hospitals. Well, CCS, look, if this unicorn technology was as wonderful as people said, then I'm sure that the coal industry would have developed it to on a working basis by now. Look, they are making, the coal lobby, the coal industry is making record...
It's
your
still
question was about
developing,
public
but it
money.
is...
Your question was about public money, and no, this is not a good use of public money.
Okay, well, just allow me to ask the next part, because this goes to technology that the IPCC actually states as necessary technology to address climate change. Are you disagreeing with them?
Well, if the coal industry wants to develop carbon capture and storage and make it workable, then they can do it out of their own pockets, because at the moment they are making money out of Australia being on fire and of people losing their homes and their properties and their lives.
It can be used for any industry, concrete, cement, for example, gas it's being used already.
Well, if we're talking about alternative technologies, we've got them now. We've got sun, we've got the wind. If we want alternative technologies and public investment in alternative technologies, then we can do it right now. Well, with cement, okay, if they come up with a way of doing that, and that we can have investment in looking at green cement, we need to look at how we create green steel and find some process for substituting out of metallurgical coal to get green steel. All of these things are things that at the moment people around the world are working on, and Australia could be getting behind some research into that if it wants to, but at the moment instead we're going completely the opposite direction.
We are out of time. Adam Bandt, thanks for your time today.
Thanks very much, Tom.